Welcome to this week's episode of the WEA Pod, your weekly dose of inspiration from so many incredible people across our industry. And let me tell you, today is no exception. I'm Verona Frankish and I'm the proud chair of the Women in Estate Agency Board. This pod could not be possible without the incredible support of our sponsor partners, Digital Sparks. They are creating some incredible content for so many agents in the industry, so pop over to the Insta and check them out. So get buckled up and welcome to the WEA Pod. The first time I met our guest today is actually a moment I'll never forget. We were at the Women in Estate Agency conference and someone introduced me to her and we started talking really freely, really openly, and she told me a little bit about her story and I was completely compelled to find out more. So over the last few months, I have found out more. I've met with her personally and I've learned a lot about her story. And I just want to tell you now, this is a phenomenal story from a phenomenal woman, and I am delighted to welcome to the pod Caren Gilbert-Weedman.
Hi, Verona.
So Caren is currently a business owner with EXP, runs a phenomenal business. But you describe your life, Caren, as a tale of two halves. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to ask you a little bit about why do you say that, and tell the listeners a little bit about your story.
I believe, well, from a business perspective, I believe that there's always been a dilemma of how I operate, whether from a business perspective or from an ethical perspective. And we can come on to that, I'm sure, but I believe that those values are now aligned. From a personal perspective, my parents were self-employed, so I grew up in that industry and of, working parents and working myself, helping my parents and really having that ability to really get my teeth into the business element. When I went to school, that's what I flourished in.
And what was their business in, Caren? They were self-employed. What was their business?
They sold carpets and curtains to caravan parks, but also commercial, like retirement homes and things like that. Yeah. So I would often say, hello, I'm on the telephone, as we had the dial-up telephone. I'm from Mamka Furniture Covers, or I'm from, and I'd be sent out to deliver leaflets, and my twin sister and I and two brothers, and we just grew up. We didn't have a lot financially. I think they paid for our education, but it wasn't something that we took for granted. Yeah. So we all knew that we needed to invest into life. But I also had a value set in the sense of when I went into the industry of working in retail management, I started at McDonald's down the road to here in Chiswick.
How funny is that?
After doing children's parties, and I think I was about 19 then. And then about 21, I went to work as a deputy manager in Birmingham for Dorothy Perkins. Mm-hmm. And I really felt my value code, my value set was not aligned with what I was doing. So I then went to work with people with learning difficulties and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But then I became pregnant, I got married, I became pregnant, and again, you have to shift in a sense of what's going on. And when I married Nick, we were both Christians, and that's how we operated in terms of, we had a ministry of helping young people. We set up a youth project and we fostered teenagers. So life changed hugely. Yeah. So for 10 years, we were fostering young people who were at risk of being on remand, or teenage mum, or, or having had difficulties in one way or another.
And can I just pause on that point to say, with a Christian upbringing and a Christian value set, giving back to society and doing things for other people is something so admirable. And I grew up in a Catholic environment, so I can totally relate to the sense of community and giving back and wanting to be part of that community and wanting to create a world that's better for the future and for everybody else.
Yeah.
But actually doing it in the way that you did and taking people into your home and wanting to do better for the next generation is something pretty phenomenal. So
I think something that I've learned from a very young age, I remember being, and this might be, I don't know, people might think it's crazy, but I was about 13 and I was watching a television programme, whatever it was, and I thought, I'm wasting my time here because I don't even know what I've watched, because I hadn't internalised it. And I thought then, and it's been along my journey in terms of personal and professional, the word responsibility keeps coming back, and to me, I think that means I need to choose. My saying is, if it's to be, it's up to me. So if I've got the ability, what is my response?
Yes.
So I do that. Whatever choices I make in life have to align with those values. So
I love that. Absolutely. The responsibility piece. And it's a bit, I guess other people would call it a purpose. And I love how you framed it. If I have the ability, what's my response? I love that. So you and Nick were raising or helping to raise these disadvantaged teenagers.
Yeah.
And tell me about Nick also went on an incredible mission to do even more good in other parts of the world. Yeah,
so he was an ex-Marine commando, and we met through footballers. So he was very friendly with Cyril Regis and Dennis Bailey, and I went to help at this event, and we met, and we were married 12 months after, and our value code was very similar, and but he was best friends with a man who was immense. So basically his name was Frank Collins, and he was the youngest one in the SAS to go through the embassy siege, and Frank had a lot to do with the project, but he sadly, he was working as a padre in the SAS, but he was also on GMTV as a vicar and things like that. But he'd written a book, and Andy McNabb, it was around that time, and the MOD had said, yes, we agree to it, and then suddenly they said no. And within a very short space of time, he'd committed suicide. Wow. And he'd lost, that 4 children who were 6 to 16 had lost their father. Wow. And it really affected Nick. I'd walk in and he would be face down crying and for a man who was such a real, he was a PTI in the army. He always was very strong for everyone else. Yeah. And he really it just was really difficult. But through that grief, Nick said to me, I want to carry on the work that Frank was doing, which basically was aid work. And he reached out to Tear Fund, which aren't far from here. I think Teddington, are we near? Yeah, that's not far from here at all. And he then went to work for Tear Fund. He was there in Kosovo for 6 weeks and phoned me up and said, Caren, I really want to stay. We've got a hospital and a school to finish. I really want to stay. And I said, no. Do you have young children at the time? I had one. Young and foster children as well. Yes. So, who were teenagers. But Lauren was only 6, going on 7, nearly 7. And he said, I really want to stay. And I said, the agreement was, Nick, that you would come home for half term or holidays. And he said, OK, I'll come home. And then he came home. We had a great week, really good. It was Halloween and bonfire night. And we just had a really good week. And then he went off again to Kosovo via Rome. And on the way, basically I didn't know, but the next day his parents came into the office where I was working as an estate agent, and probably haven't discussed that yet. But I knew there was something wrong. They were both crying.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put the phone down, so I kept hold of this lady. I have no idea who she was.
Or what you were talking
or what we were
about.
talking about, because it was probably...
You just knew doom was impending.
So I then found out that the plane had crashed and he died. So that was 1999. There was only, well, I shouldn't say, there was 25 people on that plane. And the ripple of, you know, when I think of grief, I think now, having experienced that, the ripple of effect that one person dying can have is huge.
Yeah.
And it's not just, and in Nick's case, that, you know, he'd affected so many people. And to this day, I still have people reach out to me.
But what a wonderful legacy to leave. And I mean, I can't even imagine the shock, the grief, the having to deal with that with a young child, and all the other things that are going on in your life. You're trying to maintain your job, you're raising your own child, and as a foster mum as well. How did you rebuild after that? How did you find the strength to...
So I had really it was around about 2 years or so before that I'd put my house on the market. Actually a bit more. I'd put my house on the market, and the lady who was running the business said, "Caren, I could do with someone like you working for me." And I said, "Oh, I'll come and help you out, but I won't work." I didn't want to get paid.
Yeah.
I said, "I'll just come and help me out." The first day, she said to me, "Oh, I've got a valuation." And I said, "Can I do it?" But you know when you don't know what you don't know?
Yeah.
And to be fair, it was pretty simple because they were all quite similar price. It was first time buyer domain in that particular area, and I went out and I put the property on, and then it became, I was putting on 10 a week, selling 10 a week, and it became an absolute bug. I just fell in love.
Yeah.
So when Nick died, I still had that passion to get up, to go to work. I still needed to keep positive for Lauren.
Of course.
I still needed to keep on with school and all the things that went on. My foster son, who was with me, went through a really hard time, and he was a teenager. And I said, "Sweetheart, if you live under my roof, you either have to work, study, or do both."
Yeah.
The next day he went to work, and he then became a dental technician. He's since left and he's gone to work in a children's home, and he wants to give something back. And he's a lovely, they're a lovely family. Him and his partner, who were together then, are married, and they've got 2 children. So
amazing.
I'm very proud of them.
Well, you should be, because of all the work that we do in life, Caren, that is the best, the most productive, and the most important.
Absolutely.
Aside from anything that's earning money, you know, raising good children, responsible adults, super important. So you found your passion in estate agency, but it also, in some ways, it became your saviour, I guess, because of everything that was going on in your world.
There's no doubt it was my saviour. But I also knew that I wanted to go back home. I grew up in North Wales, and I was feeling, I'll tell you how I felt. I didn't know who to trust in my life, because I suppose who I did in terms of Nick had gone, and I felt I needed to be round my family. So I moved back to Wales, to Lauren's disgust, because she said, "Mum, there's too many sheep to play with."
Well, fair argument.
Yeah.
And how old was Lauren at this time?
So she was 7. She was 7.
And how did losing her daddy, how did that affect Lauren?
Huge. Huge. She has gone on to have really bad mental health. And there's a whole thing that goes with that.
Yeah.
I do believe that in terms of responsibility, has she taken good choices? But she's an adult, and I have to sit back and let her be, and
Yeah.
let her be, and let her
Let her
grow.
and let you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, we both read the book. Yeah,
Definitely.
and we will come back to that in a little bit, if that's okay. So, you got back home, surrounded by your family and the friends, and did that help you to build back that trust in human nature and in people again?
I was really close to my nana, who died probably over 10 years after I moved back home. And we've got a big family, and we do have lots of family get-togethers. I felt like I was happy in myself, in a sense. So, and then obviously life changed yet again.
Took another turn, so tell us about that.
And you know, the tale of two halves. There are two halves, and I think the two halves are the wish to do business in a business, but also through an ethical social justice way. So they're the two halves, and then the other two halves are being married to Nick, and then 3 years after Nick died, I met Ellie. I didn't expect it. She didn't either, and we have been together now for 23 years.
And you've just recently celebrated your anniversary,
Yes.
I saw, which those photographs were absolutely beautiful. And so, was your discovery?
Actually, no, I'm thinking that was because of Pride Month.
Oh, was it?
Wasn't it? I'm
Okay,
trying to think. Yeah.
Right, so I got that wrong. So, meeting Ellie and discovering there was an attraction with Ellie, did that take you by surprise?
Hugely. And one thing I realised is the strength of integrity in relationships. So Nick was a hugely integral person, but equally Ellie is, and the amount that she has done for what's happened since has astounded me, and people do hold her in high regard, and I probably don't tell her as much as I should, but I think, well, she does know, but I really, really appreciate who she is and what she's done for me and for the children.
You clearly are a person that chooses people in your life who are aligned with your values. So the very fact that you've been together 23 years tells me a lot about the type of person that Ellie is as well. Would you like to share a little bit with us in terms of how Ellie has helped you in the years since then, in terms of your own family setup?
Yes. So Ellie, at the time when we met, worked for British Airways as a stewardess and had a great life. And she'd broken her back, as she found out on her 40th, in two places. She'd fallen off a horse 10 years prior, but it hadn't been found out. And I was really worried about her lifting suitcases. And also, it's quite ironic that we went to a party with fellow British Airways people in Surrey, and somebody came to me and said, in fact, they showed me pictures of holiday photos in Egypt, and Paul, his best friend, was Nick's best friend in Kosovo, and now has him and his wife have Nick's cycling jacket.
Wow.
And then another friend came up to me and said her husband did the investigation for the crash. So we were at a party, and I'm saying, can I just have a glass of wine?
Wow, absolutely.
It was nanu.
Yeah, that's a long process.
Yeah. But since then, Ellie, I then went on to take on the business in Birmingham and had 2 offices, which, if I look back, it was far too much. Lauren was having to board for a couple of days a week, and it wasn't right. But it didn't last for long, thankfully. Yeah. I gave it up. I walked away, to be honest, and was happy to lose what I'd invested because I didn't want the family to suffer.
The price was too high. Yeah.
So then I said to Ellie, why don't you qualify in Arla and leave
British Airways.
British Airways. and I still look back and think, oh, we could have got concessions.
Can you just
Probably was
imagine the life? Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Everything comes at a price.
yes, and it was at the time the war, and I did have fear attached to losing a partner.
Absolutely.
Especially with flying.
Yeah.
And I rightly or wrongly, it did affect me in that respect.
You're only human. I totally understand why that would be a fear.
And then we did have lots of things with Lauren that we were going through, but she went to a school, quite an academic school in Wales, and we were concerned about how she was developing in lots of ways. And sadly, the school said, it was a private school, but the school said, oh, it's because her dad have died and it's because you're gay. So.
Wow. Oh, wow.
But knowing what we know now and what we didn't know then, she now has autism, she has ADHD, she has PT, I mean, she has
a lot neurodiversity. Yeah.
And a lot of that will be connected to her dad dying.
Well, it's trauma, and trauma affects everybody in very different ways, and it's incredibly sad that she's had to deal with the trauma and then the consequences from that. That's difficult.
So the consequence is really that we got a call from social services. We had our concerns, along with many others, about the care of the children in Lauren's care. They were, at this time, they were probably one and a half and or 1.5 to 2, and so there's 24 months between them. So I'm trying to think, probably nearly 3 and just 6 months. And so we did quite a bit around the family to try and keep the children with Lauren. There was no doubt that she loved them. There was, but the father didn't want to know, but it was how she could be supported. So we tried every which way. I can't tell you the amount of houses that I've cleaned, painted, carpeted. Yeah. So when so basically that didn't work, and we were then approached to see whether we would take them on, or because they were only 2 and 4, they were highly adoptable.
Right.
Adoptable, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was a really hard decision. I can't say it was easy.
Yeah.
But equally, there wasn't any choice in that decision.
I know exactly what you mean. You knew the consequences were going to be far-reaching either way. So you decided to look after your grandchildren.
So they were 2 and 4. Reese has autism. Lottie has ADHD, but they are thriving, and that's the difference in terms of what we know now and what we didn't know. We have been able to support. So Reese, when he first went to primary school, was really, really resistant, climbing underneath chairs, underneath tables, not wanting to engage. He's got a main part in the end of school, end of primary. Both of their reports came back last night. We could not be prouder. They are immense, and
that's phenomenal. And Caren, that is a huge compliment and credit to you and Ellie for what you've achieved, because that cannot have been easy, as well as raising those children. And they're now, tell me how old they are.
They are now 11 and 9.
Okay, so that is a long investment of your life into raising your grandchildren that nobody expects to have to do, but also you're dealing with that amongst all the other effects of Lauren's condition and her life as well. Yeah. So, unbelievable credit for you to have taken that on.
And I've got to say, Ellie's family have really supported. They are a lovely, lovely family, and my family. And I make it my mission to see Nick's family, because I think it's important to do so. And they're lovely people too. So we are really old school with them. You know, we're not able to be going out doing lots, and because we're working. So I started doing the degree 4 years ago, and I've recently gained that.
And your degree is in child psychology?
BA Honours in working with children and families and welfare and education.
I mean, even for you to invest 4 years of your life on top of everything else into doing that says a whole lot about you. So that's an amazing achievement to have done that. Well done.
I want to be a role model for them. I want them. So, like what I said to Ian, all those years ago, you either have to work, study, or do both.
Yeah,
they've seen
that
me
in practice.
do both. Yeah. And Ellie do exactly the same in whatever capacity. And you know, Ellie's got her degree. I didn't get that chance, so I just did it for my own.
Phenomenal.
So, yeah.
So it would be remiss of me not to talk about now the business that you lead and that you own. And I think by your own admission, you found a way in which you can blend business with the ethics and the social justice that you believe and have demonstrated time and time and time again, Caren. So tell us about your business now and how much you enjoy what you're doing with EXP.
So with the business, you know, I just feel as if it found me. You know,
like so many other things in your life,
yes,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's now a pleasure. I don't need to take on numbers. It's not all about taking on
volume.
Although, you know, I get a phone call every day. Most days, just saying, we've been recommended to you, and that's great. I'm also looking at finding people in the area who can work with me, and I've taken working with he's a young man, I think he is, and you know, we work very well together. So, and I'm looking at doing some events at Moneypenny and to look at growth, but also to look at people can do what you do, what I do, within the realms of their restricted, in terms of their lives,
yes,
and make it work for them. So they're like your associate partner, like yes, EXP, and I believe it's given me the tools to do and to be and to absolutely flourish in what I'm doing. The other thing that has happened since I started, I got approached by the board of directors for Pride in EXP to actually be a director. And I thought, oh, I've never done anything like this. What can I do? You know, but it's really been, I've loved it. They've said that I've added value. I hope I have added value. And
but isn't that, Caren, isn't that a classic example? So you did the same thing when the boss in the Birmingham agency said, can you go value that property? And there's an element of doubting yourself.
Yeah.
There's an element of almost, I'll just give it a go. And in the same way, you've entered into this phase of your life, I guess. Yeah. And you've got all this experience, but we still manage to doubt ourselves. We still manage to question if we're good enough.
Absolutely.
And we have to stop doing
what
that.
I say to people when I speak to others, you know, is if anyone asks you to do something, as long as it's legal, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. And even if you think, I don't know how to do it, you will find out. And
say
just
yes,
like me being here today,
it out later.
Do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do it. And, you know, I've been on a podcast, on a webinar, but not face-to-face. And, you know,
but tick that box.
That's done.
Amazing.
That's done. And hopefully in time, there'll be many more,
absolutely,
and many more things to cross and many more, you know, I see it that life is really short. And what we do with our tomorrows is basically about today. So if we make those decisions to stretch ourselves, to grow, to develop today, we will have, you know, amazing things to happen tomorrow.
But you're so right. It is a decision. It is a choice. It is not, things like that don't happen. You have to make an active choice to put yourself in an uncomfortable position to take that risk. And then you're absolutely right, amazing things happen. So we have unbelievably come to the end of our slot. So there's a couple of more questions I just want to end with. The first one is, as I said, we met at the Women in Estate Agency Conference earlier this year. And I wanted to get your view on why do you think women in estate agency is so important to our sector?
I believe it's about empowering one another. And I found out about EXP through Claire Hughes, in fact, who reached out to me because there was something that I put on a post about supporting one another. And Claire, and I said about my scenario of being a nana, bringing up two children who were very young at that time. And Claire reached out and said, can we have a chat? And I think we talked for hours. there is a common thread. And then it was a case of, at the end of the conversation, I said, can you tell me, what do you do? And then I said, tell me more. But I've lost my thread.
Why is women in estate agency so important?
Well, for one thing, I think we do empower each other. We can grow together. I think I put something on today, a post about checking our bits on the 1st of each month.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think male and female, I have to say.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's a platform that is incredible. It's grown from very little, and like, I spoke to Simon about, I've set up LGBTQ plus estate agency, and I've got 72 who've joined.
Amazing.
I'm happy with starting humble.
Absolutely.
We have to start
eventually become oak trees. Yeah.
And so it's about empowerment, it's about collaboration, and it's about individual growth.
Amazing. So my final question, Caren, is we are 6 or 7 weeks into the We Are Pod. Who would you like to see on this chair in a future episode of the pod?
This was so difficult because I have met so many inspirational people just by even going to the women.
Full of them.
Yeah, and I think, and I've almost stripped it back to who have I met that I would like to know more about their story. And there's one person that I haven't had that conversation with, but I know her story, that she's now in a state agency. She was the autistic chef. So she's married to James Hughes with EXP.
Right.
And I believe that she could bring her story and help us in terms of understanding neurodiversity.
Fantastic.
And that's who I would suggest.
Great. Well, we'll find out who that lady's name is and we'll get her on the pod. Interestingly, today we've also recorded an episode with Holly Regan, who is one of the business owners at Yopa, who 3 years ago was diagnosed with ADHD. And she also talks about her experiences and how she's learned and discovered lots about herself since that diagnosis. So it's another great watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Caren, thank you so much for sharing your just honestly incredible story. What an amazing person you are. And thank you. There is no question that everybody's watching will be so impressed by the individual that you are. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.